It certainly is. Well,
Yeah.
it's great to meet you, and I love your background being a disability advocate. My son, he's 19, he's on the autism spectrum, so I've been in the
Ah,
special needs community my whole life, so
got it.
a deep amount of respect for everyone out there that advocates for those that need extra help in a world that I feel is increasingly getting to a point post-COVID of not being as accepting as they were before.
It's the schools in particular, I think it is it's always been a challenge, right? I've been working in the schools since 2002. I was a teacher first, and then I went into being a school psychologist and so on, but it has been increasingly challenging, I think, like you said, post-COVID. I think that highlighted the difficulty in getting students with disabilities and people, I shouldn't even say students, I should say all people with disabilities, supports in the community, in schools, everywhere. And
Yeah,
then I think it's sort of continued.
yeah,
And we often talk about how individuals with disabilities are kind of the last group that there's almost an acceptable discrimination toward. That there aren't a lot of slaps on the wrist when somebody says something. Everybody's like, "Oh, I know it's so hard," and we're like, "No, no, that's not okay. They're people, right?" So that's kind of the battle that we're fighting. And my son is also he was I don't even know if that's I've shared that because it's recent. He was diagnosed with autism
yeah.
just a few months ago. So he's 3, and so we just got that diagnosis too. So now I get to walk both paths, which I think is
Wow.
actually helpful because I can share both sides with people.
Absolutely. Yeah, I went to a theme park with Miles over the last weekend in Oklahoma City. He loves amusement parks. That's like his therapy.
Yeah.
And we were getting all of our stuff together, and some of the work there said, "Does he get a disability pass?" And I was like, "No, I've never done that with him. I've just, it's there's a part of me that wants him. I don't even know that it's been conscious as much as it's just I just want him to understand the world is going to be a cold place, and the world is we just have to do things because we all exist as humans on this world. And I don't
Yeah.
want him to be fettered by all of these things that are different all the time. There's certain things that happen with Special Olympics. He gets to do really cool things, and
Right.
there's things that come along with it, but overall, I guess my point is I just never even thought about it. I was like, no, we don't need the pass because the lines weren't really bad in this park, but
Right.
it's like I don't know, I just don't operate that way with them. It's not an automatic that he needs to have a boost up in line because he's dealing with something different than everybody else is.
Right. And I would say that I think sometimes that's good and sometimes the it's not necessarily a boost up, right?
Right.
It's right. It's the it gives him the thing that to operate in a world that isn't built for him,
Yeah.
right? Our world is not built for anyone who is not neurotypical,
Yep.
right? Our world is built for everyone else to fit in. And if
Yep.
they don't, then honestly, screw them, right?
Yep.
That's kind of how the world operates. And I think that the one thing is that I think with the conversations and the way things are going, even if it's not perfect, we are talking about it more.
Yeah.
So that is the one benefit of what's going on. It doesn't mean that we fixed anything, but we there is an awareness of it, there is a consciousness of it.
Absolutely. So let's get into we kind of touched on COVID, which has been a
Yeah,
really big thing that affected all of us, but it did its own kind of thing in the special needs community and the educational community. So
yeah,
ultimately, 4 years ago, we were trying to get a handle on it. And I know LA was way different than other places in
that's
the
true.
world. Like even coming from Florida, it was like night and day. But
Oh, yes.
ultimately, how did you survive that time period? And how did it change the way that you do things now?
So I think with schools, with education, with just students with disabilities, with any services for students with disabilities, I think what it did is it opened up a whole world of being able to provide services in a different way, to offer meetings in a different way. I think that it made things more accessible. But during that time period, it was a nightmare. So for a year, it was a disaster. But there were so many analogies going around at that time about, oh, we're building the plane while we're flying it, we're sailing the boat while it's sinking. I mean, there were so many analogies, none of which were enjoyable or ideal. but it was true, right? We were figuring it out while as we were going because we had to. We hadn't had anything else like this. The good news is that creates a model for future, and it creates a model for doing things in a different way, for doing things differently than we've done them before, for not being stuck in the status quo. Now, do I think that means that everything's better and we're now being creative and innovative? No, but I do think that it has helped us. For example, one of the things that we do now that we never did before was we allow to have virtual meetings with parents, right? So we never did that before. They were always in person. So for IEPs, right? For when students have IEPs, individualized education programs,
Yep.
that means that that means we're more accessible and inclusive to parents, right? So it's not only about being inclusive to students, even though that's super important, but it is about bringing the families in and making sure the families are participating. So we have I've seen it across the board. Not every school district in the country is doing it, but a lot of them have continued that. Is it means parents who work hourly jobs where they may have to lose pay to participate in a meeting, they would either miss the meeting or they would lose money.
Yeah.
So now they don't have to make difficult decisions like that because now we know that we can have, like you and I, right? We're on Zoom right now, right? So
Yep.
we can do things like this. It's a whole new world that's opened up.
Yep.
Now, do I think in person is still better? I do. I think engagement is higher. I think people are more dialed in when they don't have the ability to be working on their computer at the same time they're on a meeting,
Yep.
but it is still better, right? It's still
Yep.
better than nothing. If you're going to not come or come, I would choose you to be 50% there rather than 0% there. So I think that's some of the things that have happened is there's more innovative solutions happening.
And you're totally right, because I remember with Miles, we would have to pick him up, get in the car, spend 20 to 30 minutes to go down. They would only really want to interact with him for 10 minutes because it just wasn't something that he was, it just, there was a level of short-term memory that went into it, and they just didn't need him
Right.
long. They needed it for us. So this way we can do it remotely. So yeah, I think that's been a huge
Right.
byproduct of this. So,
Right.
so let's get to the heart and soul of what you do on a daily basis. And I'm going to put you in
Yeah.
front of a bunch of third graders. It's career day. And one of the kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" Do you answer
Right.
him?
So truthfully, what I do I have two jobs that I do, right? So during the day to day, I am the director of special education. So I help adults help kids. That's the easiest way to say it. I make sure that they are doing the best that they can to make sure that students with disabilities do get the services that they need. Um, on my passion, my project that I'm doing now, which is Disability Ed Pros, I am helping parents and anyone else who wants to learn how to be a better advocate, a more confident advocate, and kind of I don't like to use the word fight, but maybe navigate the system
Yeah.
because it's super complicated. Uh, I tell the story often that for my son's first IEP, when he was transitioning from like the early intervention services, the 0 to 3, going to at 3, getting his assessment and testing for the school district services, I was I disagreed with some of it, right? So I had to go through a process and I know that process, right? Like that's kind of what I do every day. But I was telling my sister, she's the CFO of a giant company. I mean, she's a lawyer by training. And I told her, she's like, she looks at me and she goes, how do people know how to do this? Right. Like, so it's not her intellect, right? It's just like, if you are not in it, how does a normal, like, and I don't like the word normal either, but how does a person who doesn't do this for their job, how do you figure it out?
Yep.
And that's what I hear from parents all the time. So that is kind of my passion project that I've started building on the side. And I'm trying to put resources, free resources. Eventually I hope to have classes out for parents. But really right now it's about free resources and I'm working on a YouTube channel now as well to put some longer content out so I can really make it accessible to people because there's a lot of stuff out there that's also not correct. And that is my little side pet peeve.
Yeah, I get it. And I run into that a lot with other special needs parents. There's a program in Kansas City, and it goes around the country. It's called Challenge Air, and what
Mhm.
they do is they take special needs kids. on a plane ride around in a little have you heard about this?
I have.
Okay.
Tell me more. Just keep talking about it though, because I think it's so important to talk about it.
Yeah, so it's like a little twin Cessna or a smaller one, and they'll take the kids up, and they have cheerleaders and a red carpet, and they cheer you on, and you go out, and in Kansas City they'll fly over the stadiums, over our amusement park and downtown, and come back, and they get like little wings and get a certificate. And Miles has been doing it for like the last 9 years now, and I'll bring it up to parents, and they're like, I had no idea about that, and I'm sure that's a lot of what you're doing, being an ombudsman, to allow
Yes.
people. You're basically giving people a flashlight in a very dark room.
I love that. I may steal that. I'll give you credit. But that's really what it is. I think that there is so much people are really dying for information, right? They're looking for information. They're struggling uh with everything, right? It's hard and it's emotional, right? I think that's the other piece of it. When I was a school psychologist, I was often the first person. I would do the assessment, I would do the testing, so this is now 15 years ago. And I was often the first person to talk to a parent about autism
Yeah,
or to talk, and then we don't diagnose in schools, but we do talk about, eligibility for services. So I was the first person talking to a parent about, autism or even a learning disability, anything that a child could be going through. And so I had a lot of those conversations with parents, and it is emotional, it is hard. It is some parents were struggling with whatever maybe they had another child first and they knew kind of what a typical, again, not really apply because every child is different, but there was a the sense of the or the fear of the unknown, the fear of what do I do. There maybe was guilt sometimes, all of those things, and I went through that myself too with my own child. So but back when I was in my late 20s, I was helping parents through this, and so I have always carried with me this great sense of responsibility of the work that I do with parents.
yeah,
And and I hear some stories about I'm on some parent groups and things, and I see a lot of people saying, "Oh, this director of special education, you don't talk to them." And I'm like, "No, no, I promise, I'm not like that." And you are limited sometimes when you work in schools because you are within a system, you are within a hierarchy, or not a hierarchy, a bureaucracy. That's the word.
yep,
And you get stuck. We all get stuck in these sort of broken systems. But that's what I want parents to understand, and I want to help parents with is there are ways to work the system. There
yep,
are ways to work within the system, and doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean it's going to be fast, but you can do it.
yeah,
And that's, again, like I said, I feel such a sense of I don't know what the word is, but it's a thing that I take very, very seriously, and I think is so, so important, because they're kids, and it's a really big deal. And a lot of people I've seen in schools view with some of the parents who are advocating for their kids, the staff might view them as adversaries. But I'm like, you guys have to understand what these parents are going through.
yeah,
They have never not had to fight for their kids.
yeah,
So they're telling you what their kids need, and we have to listen. And then we may not be able to say yes to everything, but we still get to listen.
yeah,
Like, it's not personal. I
yeah,
mean, it's personal for them. It's not personal against the school.
yeah, absolutely. It's a hard
So,
situation to be in, but you've been in this for most of your life. Before we get into your diagnosis at 17,
yeah.
let's stay in dreamland for a minute. What did you want to be in the third grade?
So I spent a lot of time saying that I just wanted to help people. My
Oh,
parents were like, do like horrified by that because they were like, that doesn't come with a salary. But I was back and forth. I said I wanted to be a doctor. I said I wanted to be a veterinarian. But I never said I wanted to be a teacher.
yeah,
My mom was a teacher though. So I sort of, it's not terribly surprising that I ended up in education. But teaching was not the right place for me. I did connect with the kids though. That was how I ended up as a school psychologist. I found that I spent a lot of time and did a really good job at connecting with them emotionally and figuring out how to build those skills and create a safe environment. And but I was teaching elementary school, and again, my mom told me I should have taught high school. She was probably right. I should have listened to her. And I did end up being a high school psychologist, and I loved that. So she was probably right. But it doesn't really matter in my story though, because I ended up at the right place. That's kind of how I look at it. You know, it's
Yeah.
I found my way to where I was supposed to be. And I think that, my mom was, without me necessarily knowing it, she was kind of a role model, even though I never said, "Oh, I want to be a teacher." I saw her doing the work that she was doing and supporting kids. And she was a chorus teacher, but I've never seen anyone keep the hours that she kept. I mean, she worked day and night and weekends and took trips and did all this above and beyond and connected with her kids, took care of them if they were missing something at home. And they were part of our family, so it was something that I saw growing up that I think was ingrained in me, that just became part of who I am. And without saying this is important, she showed, right? That you talk about actions, making a bigger impact, and they really did, because that's how I was brought up.
So you were diagnosed with epilepsy at 17?
Yeah.
Okay. So who was a hero? Who was an inspiration for you to get through that time period and ultimately evolve into what you're doing now?
Oh, that's an excellent question. So there, I had a couple different sort inspirations in my life, and I think they came at different times. I think when I got diagnosed with epilepsy, I don't know that I had anyone in particular at the time, right? Because I went through such a weird transitional period that because I was graduating high school, moving on. But before that time, I would say absolutely, I had a high school swim coach who was also a teacher at the high school, and he was absolutely an inspiration. He was there through everything, connected through everything. It was just super motivational. He's still in touch today. Like I'll get random mailings of newspaper articles or old pictures he finds, and he does that with everyone too. So he was one of those people that was just he was always there and always consistent, and showed up and reminded everyone of reminded me of what I could do and what I was capable of. And so I think, so for that first part of my life, he was definitely one of those very, very impactful people in my life. And then I think going on to college and sort of processing all of this, I think I have to say it's always been my mom, because there have been friends that I have a best friend who's been a major impact in my life and is still here. I met her during college. But then my mom has really been I think my driving force, my sort of grounding, always been there. During college, I had a chunk of time where I was really, really struggling. And I ended up taking a semester off to deal with my mental health. And that was, as a result of the epilepsy, the changes, all of this had happened in such a short period of time. I graduated. I was diagnosed in December. I graduated in June. I went to Yale in August, and there was just a lot that had happened. And I don't know that at the time we would have thought about, oh, I have a diagnosis of a disability and I may need to think about my mental health, right? That was, it was 30 years ago. I
Yeah.
can't believe I'm giving away my age, but we didn't think about it then.
Yeah.
Now we do.
Yeah.
Now I think about it with everyone who I talk to about disability. But at the time, it was just, oh, well, just we're worried about you having a seizure, but nobody was worried about how I was going to cope with the transition, like one of the biggest transitions in a young person's life.
Yeah.
So I ended up taking a semester off, and we had to get money back. I think we lost some of the tuition. I mean, I say we, I mean my parents. So the fact that at that time, and my parents' generation, which we don't really they don't really talk about feelings in the same way that we do or that I do, right? And so I should say my mom and my dad, but my mom is a little more, she's willing to indulge my sharing.
Yeah.
And they let me take a semester off. I went home, I went to therapy. And so I think that having them there to allow me to do what I needed was probably the single biggest um, turning point in being able to move on with, or move forward, I should say.
Yeah.
Because I went back to college and I had a great, last year. I was able to really participate and engage and connect with my friends and really take advantage of my last year of school.
So of all of these things that you've done and overcome in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Oh, my son. There, without a doubt, he is the joy and the light of my life. And I think I knew I wanted to be a parent. I knew and there were times where I didn't know if I would be, but he is, I'm going to tear up talking about him.
Yeah, I
He
get it.
is just light and happiness and joy. I laugh more than I ever have with him. And it is hard and I'm tired. And there are, therapies upon therapies, and there's IEP meetings, and there's so much that goes into it. And I mean, he's only 3, so I know there's more to come, but it is absolutely hands down best thing ever.
Yep, I agree. I agree. And the thing is that as he gets older, you'll realize they won't get hung up on all the things the typical neurotypical brain does, which
Yeah.
is refreshing, you know. So
I like it.
so at the end of the day, everyone has a
Yes.
perception of you. Family, friends, clients, everyone you're helping with the
Yeah.
flashlight in the dark room. But ultimately you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I am deeply passionate. I am connected to people. I thrive on really, really close connection, and I am motivated by helping. That is, I mean, that's me in a nutshell. I always have been, and it just has taken different turns throughout my life, but I have ended up where I'm supposed to be, and my whole goal is to help more people.
That's I find what you're doing to be absolutely admirable, and I see it in the special needs community a lot where your day job is your night job, and that's tough. And I don't
Yeah,
think anybody out there understands.
yeah,
There's definitely the beauty in the process is that you find your purpose. So I
yeah.
think sometimes on this planet it's a given. This is what you're doing. This is what you're supposed to do. But sometimes it takes a while to find out what our real voice is.
I totally agree with that.
So it's good. So very importantly, if anyone wants to delve into any of the work you're doing to get the help, to get the resources,
Yes.
anything that and reach out to you, where do they go?
So I have a website, disabilityedpros.com. I am on Instagram at disabilityedpros, same thing. And then I have a YouTube channel currently that is Disability Ed Pros. So you can find me there. And I should have my videos up soon because I'm just building it. So
Excellent.
whoever goes there will be the first to see it.
Excellent. This has been wonderful. It's so nice to meet you. Keep doing the wonderful work.
You as well. Thank you so, so much for the time. This has been great.
It has. Absolutely.